One, and we're live.
Hello everyone and welcome back. We're coming up is our Alisha Fisher, which is our last presentation of the day. So I'd just like to take this quick moment to say thank you ever so much for joining us. Hopefully you've had an informative and exciting sort of understanding of new and present situations that are going on in the adult industry. We will of course be back tomorrow, and I just want to say again thank you ever so much to everybody who makes donations. And obviously we are still in memoriam of Dr. Amy Harwick. I'm going to pass you over to Alisha now, who's going to talk on a topic of sex workers for survivors, which is one of our most sort of highlighted sessions of this weekend. So thank you so much. I'm going to love you and leave you now. Have a great day, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kelly, for that. Hi, everyone. My name is Alisha Fisher, and today I'm going to be talking about sex work for survivors and navigating triggers and disassociations. But as we get started, I just want to say a deep thank you with so much gratitude to be in this space. Thank you so much for Pineapple support, for creating this opportunity for everyone to come together. Thank you to Pornhub for providing the space for all of us. Thank you to the sex workers and those involved in the adult industry that have supported this event, supported Pineapple, and have made this possible. An extra special shout out to the sex workers from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I love you all so much, and I know some of you are clients that I work with, and you all are near and dear to my heart. This is a really beautiful and incredible opportunity, and I am so honored to be here in memory of Dr. Amy Harwick. Thank you. So let's actually get started. This is such an important topic, and I'm so happy that there's so many folks here tuning in. Here we go. Amazing. Perfect. Okay. So sex work for survivors, navigating triggers and disassociation while working. So when I say survivors, I am more so specifically referring to those who have experienced some form of sexual violence. And sexual violence is kind of a large umbrella term, if you will, about different forms of harm that is sexual in nature. And so that can be anything between in and from inappropriate comments, harassing language, blackmailing of pictures and videos through sexual assault in and of itself. So with this conversation, obviously there's a caveat that of a content warning. We're going to be talking about these forms of violence and harm, and this may be upsetting, and this may be causing some extra thoughts, some thoughts that maybe you haven't even thought about in a while. But please know that there is support. Please reach out to Pineapple and your local sexual assault centers. There's 20, if you need someone to talk to. So what we're actually going to be going through today, so I'm going to talk a little bit about who I am and the work that I do. I'm going to talk about, what is a trigger? Trigger is a word that is being thrown around a lot these days. Sometimes it's in good context, and sometimes it's in some not so good context with some mocking undertones. So I'm just going to briefly talk about that. Then I'm going to go into what is disassociation? What does it feel like? What does it look like? Where does it come from? And then we're going to talk about how these symptoms of triggers and disassociations impact our work. And then finally, which is what most of you are here for, going into my 3 top strategies for how to navigate these symptoms. So let's get into it here. So as I said, my name is Alisha Fisher. I am an international relationship coach. And like most millennials, I have a day job and an evening job. So my day job is that I work at a local sexual assault center. I am the prevention education supervisor. So I do all the public education, social media. I talk to everyone through kindergarten, through high school, college, university, various athletic teams, governments, hiring companies, all about topics surrounding consent, healthy relationships, bystander intervention, trauma-informed spaces, and I also run workshops on sex for survivors. Then in my night job, I am a relationship coach. So I have individual and, I do coaching for individuals and people who are involved in relationships. So all different relationship struggles, and that want to talk about intimacy, connections to themselves and other people. I also do workshops and seminars just like this. All different kinds of topics that I talk about, from one of my favorite is vanilla to pumpkin spice latte, spicing up established relationships, to talking about pornography, and which leads me to my conferences speaking. I've spoken in 5 different countries about my work, which is actually about Pornhub consumption trends. Then in my other life, I'm also a PhD student. I do not have a final kind of angle of where I'm going right now, but we'll get there. And then finally, I'm also a radio show personality. Why not? So today, actually, I just released an incredible episode with Lady Delphine, who is a professional dominatrix based out of Ontario, Canada, in honor of the very special day that is today. So today being December 17th, right? I believe, yeah. Is that what the date? Yeah, 17th. It's 2020. I don't know what day it is. But being December 17th today is the International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. So this is a very, very special day to be holding this event. And again, I'm honored to be part of that. So to see that episode, as well as many more, I've got a massage specialist on there as well. You can head on over to my website, inspireintimacy.com. So let's get into it. What is a trigger? And yes, there's been some connotations around this word that people have kind of used it as like a mocking and being like, oh, what are you, triggered? And like, that is a really disregarding kind of statement, right? It's almost like you're mocking someone for something that is happening to them, right? And so what is a trigger? So a trigger is is when you experience kind of a setback. It's like a memory or flashback that transports you back to the event of the original trauma. So a trigger can really be a variety of things, but what it really affects is your ability to remain present in the moment. It's kind of like you are, you're doing the thing, whether you're washing dishes or out and about in the real world, practicing social distancing. And then you kind of had that flashback, that memory and that trigger. And what that kind of flashback and that memory does is that not only does it transport your mind to that place, but it will also transport your body. So triggers look different for all different kinds of people. And when a trigger happens, it comes with a really, really robust emotional intensity that is quite similar to that of the actual trauma itself. These triggers can be internal, so happening within our bodies, and they can be from external forces. These external forces tend to originate more from the 5 senses, such as sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. But 2 of the most common things are sight and sound. And so it's you are seeing something that reminds you of the trauma that you've experienced. It kind of takes you back, right? And so as kind of a general example of when I say triggers impact people differently, I can use an example of a car accident. For one individual, let's just say there's 2 people in a car, they're both in the back seat, and a car accident happens. For one individual, that car accident may just be like, oh, okay, cool. Are we all right? Everyone cool? Yeah, that sucked. Okay, everyone. Oh my God. Okay, let's get out. Let's get out of here and everyone's okay. All right. And to them, that wasn't really like, of course it sucks. No one likes to be in a car accident. But for that individual, it was just more of kind of like a hindrance, it's like a smaller form of trauma. It's not that big of a deal. Maybe they've been involved in a lot of car accidents before. Maybe they've seen car accidents, or maybe they just, we're okay. So there's nothing to worry about. But for their friend that's in the car, maybe that car accident could be a really powerful trigger to a time when they were traveling to see a family member that was in the hospital and was not doing well, and they got in a car accident. And what ended up happening was that they ended up missing that person before they passed. And so being in that car accident took them right back to that loss of that family member. And that is what a trigger is. And that is why a single incident of trauma can impact people in such different ways. And it's very similar with sexual violence. In fact, with sexual violence, I would even purport that there's more nuances to it. You know, we tend to think sexual violence is it's the creep at the end of the alleyway, driving the white van, handing out candy, trying to lure people in. But there are reports worldwide, anywhere between 80 to 94%. In fact, in my specific region, it's 94%. 94% of the time, the perpetrator is known to the victim or survivor. So this isn't just some random event. Sexual violence has instances of power and control that can really intensify why this trauma is so incredibly impactful. So when we experience these triggers, especially in regards to sexual violence, and as being a sex worker, there can be a lot of opportunities for triggers to happen. We will get to how you can actually deal with them, but first, dissociation. Why am I talking about dissociation? Dissociation and triggers are kind of the top two responses that we see for people who have experienced some form of sexual violence. And in fact, you know, when I do a shout out to all my Toronto sex workers, you know, they are the ones that kind of inform me about, you know, what's really happening. And with the COVID worldwide pandemic that is ongoing, they, as well as the world, are seeing a lot of are seeing an increase rather of sexual violence and domestic violence incidences that are occurring. And so talking about sexual violence and triggers and dissociation, it can be really important. So what is dissociation? It's some of the most common things that are felt when a survivor experiences this form of violence is that the mind feels temporarily separated or split off from the body. So it feels like your mind is elsewhere and then your body's here. And these symptoms of dissociation, kind of similar to triggers, can really vary. For some survivors, they describe it as the mind and body maybe being in two separate rooms, and that their mind is involuntarily running away, and that they become disconnected from themselves and then ultimately from their partners, right? If they're with someone. And there was some research that came out that showed that there are two different types of dissociation. There's depersonalization, which is a sense of feeling disconnected from one's body. So this is just the mind and body are kind of separated. They're in a different room. You don't really feel like yourself. You don't really feel like you are you, because your mind is off thinking and doing one thing and your body's doing another, and you kind of feel lost, right? It's a sense of helplessness. And then derealization, that is the feeling as if the external world is strange or unreal. So it kind of has some similarities to depersonalization, but realization is that you kind of feel that like heightened sense of being lost, right? You don't really know where your body is. You don't know what position you're in right now. You don't know kind of what you just did. You just kind of mindlessly go through things. So disassociation, as I said, can show up in a variety of different ways, whether you just feel disconnected from yourself or you feel disconnected from the external world. What is going on? And you kind of come to and you're like, wait, what just happened? So why? Why do triggers and dissociation happen? Now, there's been a couple incredible presentations earlier today talking about trauma, and I think we've got one tomorrow on resiliency. If you're wanting to have a more robust conversation around those intersections of trauma and how trauma impacts the brain, I highly suggest watching those. They were fantastic presentations. But just briefly, why do triggers and dissociation happen? So what is going on is that our brain is going into survival mode, which, you know, sounds great. Our brain's number one goal is for us to survive, for us to live. And so when we experience trauma, our brain is like, okay, how do I survive? How do I live? And that is when our brain goes into survival mode. It's actually the amygdala that senses this danger. And the survival mode responses are kind of the 3 or 4 Fs. One might be a new one to you: freeze, flight, fight, and fawn. Fawn may sound a little different, but what fawn is when we see this in a lot of childhood sexual abuse cases, and even in domestic partner violence cases, where fawn is when you love and care for the individual that's harming you in order to lessen that harm that's occurring. And it makes sense, right? Because if you have someone, especially if you are of smaller stature and you have someone who's bigger than you and stronger than you, sexually harming you, freezing might make them more upset. Do something. Why aren't you doing something? Like, why aren't you having sex with me? Why aren't you engaging in these things? Flight might make things worse if you're trying to just run out of the room. And fighting may not be helpful, especially if they are larger than you, right? And now for sex workers who have more of like the privilege of working in indoor spaces and within a certain kind of like job and like governing body that can, like, help protect you and stuff, that's one thing. But for folks who are engaging in this form of work and don't have those privileges, fighting you may not be able to do that, especially if you freeze and you're like, oh, what do I do, right? So fun. So our brain is moving into survival mode. It's all about wanting to survive and wanting to get you out of there and wanting to make sure that you live another day. And what the brain does, because the brain is smart, but it's dumb. The brain goes, okay, you experienced that trauma. Here's what I heard. Before that car accident, I heard a truck horn. I heard wheels screeching. All right. So if you ever hear a truck horn honking, you better go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Am I running a red light? Am I walking across a stop sign when I shouldn't be? The brain's kind of smart that way, right? So it makes these associations to trauma and go, okay, if I hear a truck noise, I got to get out of there. It's kind of like, back in the good old days when we all were in school and the bell would go off and we went, sweet, recess time. That is a association made by our brain to go, okay, we know that the bell means recess. But what ends up happening is that our brain, trying to keep us alive and keep us in survival mode, that kind of turns into a trigger. And so, yes, hearing a truck horn and wheel screeching is never ever, or is rarely, I should say, not ever going to be a good thing. But if you've experienced a form of sexual trauma and someone touched your hips every time before they sexually harmed you, that touching of the hips sends that signal in your brain going, okay, something's about to go down, go into freeze, flight, fight, fawn response. How do I survive? And so that touch becomes the trigger. Or the sound of a belt being taken off. So being activated is a very normal response to an abnormal event. The way our brain is responding is about keeping us alive. And so, as I said, and I will say this a million times for all the survivors out there, being activated is a normal response to an abnormal event. How do our symptoms show up in our work? And as Audrey Hepburn says, it's really annoying. Stop. It can be incredibly frustrating, especially when we just want to do our job, right? But all of a sudden our brain's going boop, 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 danger, danger, danger. Remember when that person touched the waist? Oh no, be aware. And so how do these show up in our work? Well, there are a variety of impacts of trauma. And they impact, as I said, our entire sense of self, right? And kind of going back to that truck horn going off, when you hear that horn, your body will go, huh, that kind of like, oh, what? So like it's a full body response. It's not just an emotional one. So the impacts of trauma can be physical. So I see here, physical can be symptoms like headaches, chest pain, nausea, maybe even trouble sleeping, or maybe that you need to sleep a lot. It could be even mental, right? Having those flashbacks. New sensitivities to these loud noises, these smells and other things around you can put you into this hyper state of arousal. Social. Social, sorry. So there could be a difficulty relating to others or to connecting to loved ones, friends, coworkers, especially if we're experiencing dissociation. Well, we remember that sexual violence typically happens by people we know, right? Clients. These types of triggers can disassociate us so quickly. And if we're with our friends or our family and one of those triggers happens to pop up, it's really hard and really difficult to keep connected with people in our lives, especially when our brain's going, oh my gosh, be careful, watch out. Our social impacts could be also having trouble enjoying the things that you used to, because those things that you enjoy doing could become the triggers. Being involved in sex work could become the trigger. Emotional, just a whole plethora, a whole bunch of emotions, including feelings that might seem wrong at the time. Like, for example, being afraid when we're at home, or getting extremely angry or sad, or having all these emotional outbursts. And you're like, why am I doing this? Why is my brain in such a crazy mode? You might also feel moody, anxious, sad, overwhelmed, irritated. And then finally, there's also the spiritual impacts, right? Maybe you have difficulty trusting religious figures now, or religion itself, or the certain spiritual connections you have because you're a good person and this harm has happened to you. And so now you're having all these second thoughts of, am I really that good of a person? Am I really, or did I deserve it, right? And we start to think about all these media representations of sex workers, of victim blaming that's occurring, of what happens or doesn't happen in the criminal justice system. It can be really hard to have that connection to your physical self, mental self, social, emotional, spiritual. It's all interconnected. So how do we actually deal with this? Alisha, stop talking about trauma. I want to know how to deal with this. I want to know, how can I navigate these symptoms at work when I'm walking into my client's or the space in which the clients are, and I start to feel the disassociation, I start to feel these triggers happening. How do I navigate these? Well, what I'm going to do is go over 3 of my top strategies to navigate these symptoms. Now, I will do this with a grain of salt, maybe a tablespoon of salt, or even a cup of salt. That these strategies may or may not work for you. In fact, we know that healing is not a linear path. For survivors of sexual violence, healing is like a roller coaster, but sometimes the roller coaster would also go backwards, and sometimes it's upside down, and sometimes it's just off the tracks. Healing is never just a straightforward path. And so sometimes our healing and our coping mechanisms change with our healing path. And so where some of these strategies may be super great for some of you, for others, some of them may not work. But what's really important here is that we take the opportunity to learn about these strategies and to understand, okay, cool. I know that this personal body holding is not going to work for me because I tried this and it made things worse. Alisha had the worst advice. But know that at least you've made a step in the right direction. It may not feel like it, but to know what works and what doesn't work can be really, really important. So what are the 3 strategies? Reorienting the senses, and I will go into explain these. Reorienting the senses, practical breathing. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you go, okay, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. No. We're going to do some practical breathing. And personal holding. Now, these 3 tips are rooted in either grounding, which is about the reorientation to our senses, mindfulness, which is all about the breathing, and somatic frameworks, which is all about the body. So, reorienting the senses. Now, this is going to be more of a grounding framework. And what grounding does is that it connects our body to the environment that we are in. If you remember, trauma and disassociation and depersonalization makes us feel like our minds and our bodies are in separate rooms. And so how can we get connected to that environment? Grounding. So what grounding does is that it helps us focus on our senses and our sensory experiences, which in many cases helps promote this feeling of being rooted in the present moment and not rooted in what happened way back, or wait, we're Thursdays. We're doing a throwback Thursday now. We're not doing the throwback Thursday. We need to actually focus on the real Thursday, bring us into the present moment. And so what grounding does is that it kind of helps as a light distracting us, a light distraction from what we're experiencing, and refocus on what's actually happening in this moment, right? And so now on the side here, I have a picture. It says it's a 5 senses grounding tool. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Now you can go through this. You can go, okay, 1 thing that I see a window pane. It's a really large window. In fact, I think it's the largest window in this room. And this window is outlined in metal, and this metal is kind of an off kind of chestnut color. Outside the window, I see a vast environment, and there's lots of different trees, and there's a path. The window feels kind of cool. I'm up in Canada. The window feels kind of cool. So I see the window. What else do I see? I see a mug. And this mug, it's gray, and it's like, you can't do that at work. You cannot do, like, if you can, that's great. But if you are with a client and you're having disassociation and triggers coming right, left, right, and center, how can we reorient those 5 senses while you're there and not sit there and go, okay, what are 5 things? What did Alisha say the first one was? Okay, so what can you actually do? So for example, if you are on like a bed or a massage table, if you're actually physically with an individual and you feel these feelings of disassociations and triggers occurring, start to focus on what your body is on. Okay, I am on this massage table. It's kind of leathery, but I've got a sheet in between. I feel my hands touching, my toes are touching, my baby toes crunched up for some reason. Okay, I feel my legs and my front of my shins are on the bed, and I feel that. That is about reorienting your senses. That is about feeling where you are in that physical space. And once you move from like what is touching that bed, you can go, okay, I see the room. All right, there's an orange glow. Okay, I feel it here. Okay, I'm here. Right? So that is what reorienting the senses are all about. It's all about that connection from your body to the physical environment. And so thinking about things you smell and taste and hear and see can really help with that present moment and making you feel like you are here right now. The second one is practical breathing. Now, there's kind of the yogi response of in through your nose and out through your mouth. And I know for me, I found that made things worse. I was like, wait, am I breathing in through my nose properly? Do I have allergies? When's the last time I pet my cat? Okay, now I'm not able to breathe through my nose properly. Am I breathing through my nose? Is my breathing too loud? That whole thing can really seem like a lot. And so, okay, let's get to this. What is the practical breathing? And so the practical breathing comes from more of the mindfulness perspective, and it's all about focusing your attention in and on the present moment and accepting that without judgment, which I know is a big step, but we'll get there. Mindfulness improves our well-being, our life satisfaction, our physical and mental health. There's actually been some research that has come out that, when was this? It was, I think, 2015, that looked at survivors of sexual violence and how effective mindfulness practices can really be. And they found that not only are they effective for the short term, but are also effective for the long term. And that learning these different strategies of mindfulness can actually be incredibly beneficial for lessening things like anxiety and depression and sadness, right? So breathing can relax the body. It helps our mind refocus. It also can help change our emotional state, right? If we're in this very hyper state of arousal and we're going, oh my God, okay, wait, is this happening again? Like sitting and refocusing on your breath so you're not going can be really helpful. And so what breathing does, it really helps reduce the impact of stress. And now the key component in all this is figuring out which breath works for you. So what do I mean by that? I mean that there's different ways and different strategies in which we can focus on our breath being an effective tool to help lessen our triggers and disassociations. So whether that's focusing on the inhale, Or maybe it's focusing on the exhale. Perhaps it's a mixture of both the inhale and the exhale. Why is this significant? Well, for me, I found that these very long inhales made things worse. Because, and starting to learn about trauma and starting to learn about how trauma impacts the brain, what our brain does is that it takes in as much oxygen as possible in order to think and to get us through the trauma. And so let's say we hear that we're about to get into a car accident and we see like the car's coming and we go, what did we just do? We breathed in. And so sometimes our body, no, not sometimes, our body will remember that breath in as, and so how that can impact survivors is that breathing in could actually be the trigger. And so sometimes focusing on the exhale could be more of a better strategy. So how does this all work? And why is there a door here? Where did it come from? So what we can do is practice our practical breathing by looking at a door. Now, I think most doors are rectangles. If you don't have a rectangle door, that's pretty cool. I would love to see it. But with a rectangle door, what this provides is a length, so the long parts, and a width, the top and bottom. And so you can practice that breathing strategy that works for you. So if you are more of an inhaler, we are going to inhale going up the length, exhale along the top, and inhale along the length, exhale along the base. And so what you'll notice with that one is that the inhales are longer than the exhales. Now, if you are an exhaler, what's good? You're going to exhale along, take a quick breath in, and then you're going to exhale along the length. Inhale along the top, exhale along the length, inhale along the base. But what if you're a mixture? What do? If you're a mixture, you can either start with inhale or exhale. We'll just start with the inhale. You inhale along the length, hold, exhale along the length, hold along the base. And so if you are in a physical establishment and you can see a door, before you go into your client's space, you can look at that door, practice your square breathing. It doesn't have to be as like vocal as mine was, but you can practice your square breathing and then enter the space as a way to kind of reorient yourself, as a way to kind of help relax your body, bring you into that space. And now you don't necessarily need a physical door. You can use something like your, imagination, which some of us may or may not have had to use during COVID, and think about, what could be there. All right, so if I am with my client and I'm looking at a computer screen, for example, because let's COVIDize it real quick. I can practice with my computer screen, right? And you can, do like kind of sexy poses. Ooh, yeah, you like that? That was clearly I don't have the swagger. You guys have the swagger to do that. But that is how you can look at different things in the room. So it's kind of like you're looking at reorienting a little bit and then practicing with the square. You could draw it as well with your finger. You can imagine it, but you could also use your body to actually physically move your hands along where you are looking at to help kind of with you, to help with some focus, to kind of bring more of a body presence to it, which is where we're going next. So, personal holding. Now, I will say a caveat for personal holding. With the personal holding, this is all about reorienting our mind to our body, paying attention to how our body is feeling in this space. And so, personal holding, now we know, and I think that there's maybe a little bit more from the sex workers here, that physical touch is your love language, right? You love all that physical touch. You love all the hands all over the place. Now you have to imagine all the hands all over the place right now. So that physical touch could be something that you absolutely love. Physical touch could also be a trigger. Maybe now you're grappling with like, well, I love physical touch, but now I don't because it messes me up and I don't feel good anymore. So how can we manage that? So that's kind of what I'm saying about personal holding is that, some of these strategies are going to work really well and some of these, might not work as well. But if you can do this with yourself, it can be a really great way to kind of bring back that power and control into your life with touch, right? Because if you are touching yourself, you are in control of that, no one else. And so personal holding, what this comes down to is that it's more of a body-oriented approach to the healing of trauma and other stress disorders. So the premise of it is to release this stress area within our body. Our body holds a lot of stress. I know being in COVID right now, my neck is not having it. So all the stress is being held in my neck right now. My neck, my back. Okay, so what personal holding does is that it provides an awareness of our bodily sensations as well as bringing ourselves to our center core. So I have some poses here along the side that you can do in order. And in fact, it's kind of like said that you should kind of go through all these different poses, but you can do you. And what the purpose of this is to kind of really take a moment to hold one of these poses and to just really focus on, how is my body feeling right now? What are the sensations I'm feeling? Where am I breathing? Do I feel like I'm breathing in my throat? Well, like you are breathing in your throat, but do you feel like the breath is coming from your throat? Do you feel like it's coming through your heart, your stomach? And just kind of take a moment holding that pose to just really think of, where do I feel this? It's all about kind of bringing yourself to your center with that physical touch, right? So touching the sides of our heads, the front and the back, bringing our physical self into the present moment, forehead and heart, heart and stomach, stomach and upper back. And by going through these, it brings your body into alignment. I'm not saying that you need to be in like a perfect kind of erect stature and be like, oh, I'm sitting up straight and I'm doing this. You can be slouched and doing these things too. It's really just about paying attention and doing these body scans as to how you are feeling. And what I personally like to do with each of these poses is that when I'm in this pose, I start with my feet and work my way up through my body. And I just kind of pay attention to, how are my toes feeling? Okay, they're kind of crossed and kind of just hanging out, whatever. I don't know how to describe my feet. But then like I go through and then all of a sudden you get to your thighs and your hips and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually flexing them right now. And you get to your stomach and your lower stomach and you're like, oh my gosh, I can feel myself just holding this tension in here. And so personally holding your body allows and brings yourself kind of back into this physical presence via your body. So to wrap things up here, oh my gosh, this has gone by so fast, is that our reactions to trauma are normal responses to abnormal events. These are instances that have happened to us. We did not ask for this, no matter what news reports, what the criminal justice system, what the media says. No one asks to be sexually harmed. No one. Yes, there may be consensual, non-consent discussions, but these are conversations that are much more larger and robust. You can still be harmed from that. There is no, I personally don't like when people say like, oh, there's a gray area to consent. No. You either want to do something or you don't know, which means you don't. So experiencing sexual violence is something that, unfortunately, a lot of people really deal with. And so there are supports out there for you and that they are here to listen to you. And I know as sex workers being involved in this work, it can be really, really difficult. But what I am so excited that you are here right now in pretty much your most vulnerable state on Pornhub, hanging out, watching some person up here talk about how to handle disassociation as a survivor. You are incredibly strong to be in this space right now. Triggers in disassociation is a symptom of trauma that causes this disconnection between your mind, your body, and the environment that you're in. And it throws you back into this sense of, oh my gosh, what's going on? This is happening right now. And so our brain is really great sometimes, but sometimes it can be really sucky and very annoying, especially when we just want to enjoy a good fuck and get paid for it, right? So this can be really frustrating to deal with, and these triggers can be really overwhelming. And so there are 3 key strategies for handling these triggers and disassociation. Reorient yourself. This is a grounding tool that connects your body to the physical world, to the environment. Or you can practice practical breathing. Whereas, are you an inhaler, an exhaler, or a mixture? And this is a really great mindfulness tool that brings our minds into the present environment, into where we are within our body and our reality. And then personal holds, holding yourself, opening your body up as a somatic tool to get your body connected to your inner self and start to notice these sensations, start to notice what is happening within our body. These triggers and disassociations are unfortunately something that happens to a lot of people who experience this form of violence. And I want you to know that some of these are going to work and some of these aren't, but it's really important that you try. So I sincerely want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. If you've tuned into multiple events, or maybe you just came to this one, we appreciate you sincerely. I appreciate all the workers and the folks involved in the adult industry for being here today, for opening up this platform, and for taking an opportunity to learn and to support one another. Thank you so much to Pineapple Support for creating this event in memory of Dr. Amy Harwick. And this is such a special day that we are all here on the International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. This is, I think there was an incredible conversation that happened with some legal representatives on here earlier that just really opened my eyes to a lot of different kind of levels of this. And so I genuinely thank you all for being here. I do not see anything in the comment section. If you do have a question, feel free to slide in right now as I'm saying my goodbye remarks. If you're wanting to learn more about me, you can head on over to inspireintimacy.com. There you can get connected to my services, the different coaching opportunities or speaking opportunities that are there, as well as my social media accounts. And I know social media is a really fun conversation, but I genuinely appreciate you all inviting me into this space. And thank you for joining me today.